Hey everybody, welcome to Board Game Heaven. My name is Raymond, and in this video I'm taking a look at HeroQuest First Light by Avalon Hill and Hasbro. This is a newer release of the 2021 version of HeroQuest, which is of course a reprint of the classic 1989 HeroQuest. So the rules are pretty much the same, but we'll have a look at this anyway. And if you'd like to see more about the classic HeroQuest, also check out my review of HeroQuest in the other video that is linked in the description below, or if you click the icon in the corner of this video, you'll see it as well. And before I open up the box and start explaining how to play the game and share my thoughts on it, I'd like to ask you to please hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already for more cool board game reviews and unboxings. It really helps the channel. And if you'd like to support what I do, there's also a Patreon page. The link is in the description below, and patrons of my channel get early access to all of my videos, their name in the credits, access to Patreon exclusive videos, and you save up for the Board Game Heaven enamel pin. With that out of the way, let's set up a game. To set up a game of HeroQuest, place the board in the middle of the table, and if you are the game master, the Zargon player, make sure that the HeroQuest logo is on your right. Take the game master screen and place that in front of you next to the game board, of course. Take the quest book, flip to the first quest you're going to play, and put that behind the game screen so that the players cannot see the map layout. Every player selects one of the 4 heroes, and the players pick the corresponding hero miniature, hero card, and one of the double-sided reference cards. Keep the dice, the small tiles, the doors, the miniatures, all the standees, furniture tiles, and all the cards nearby. All the different cards are separated into their own stacks. The monster cards are usually used as a reference. All their stats are also printed on the back of the Game Master screen. The dread spells are spells that are sometimes used by enemies, controlled by the Zargon player. Artifacts are special items that may be found during a quest, and equipment cards may also be found during quests or bought in between quests. The treasure deck is shuffled, and that will be randomly drawn from as characters search for treasure during a quest. And there are 4 different spell decks that have 3 cards each that are used by the heroes. Before the quest starts, the wizard player picks one of these 4 decks to use. Then the elf player picks another deck of cards to use, and the wizard gets the remaining 2. Also give every player a character sheet on which they can record their own name, their character name, and the stats of their heroes. Then the Zargon player looks at their quest book, at the quest you're currently playing, and you only set up the starting tile. Sometimes that's the door, sometimes that's the stairs tile, and anything that the players might see. So in this case, these 2 fallen blocks on either sides of the stairs blocking off those corridors. And otherwise they see nothing in this corridor because the 2 doors and these goblins here are around the corner and as such out of line of sight of the heroes. And the heroes start their quest on the tile with the staircase. Now you're done with the setup, let's explain the rules. To start the game, you start with the hero's turn, and you normally play in clockwise order, starting with the player to the Zargon player's left hand. Alternatively, as per the rules in the expansion Jungles of Delphrak, you may also have heroes take their turns in any order. I would suggest using some kind of token to indicate whether you've already taken your turn or not, if you're not going in clockwise order though. Now on a hero's turn, every player may perform 2 things. First is movement, and the second is an action. And you can do that in any order you wish, but you cannot start a movement, do an action, and then finish with possible remaining movement points. And there are several actions you can take. The actions that you can do are attacking a monster, casting a spell, searching for treasure in a room, searching for secret doors in a room or in a corridor, and searching for traps in a room or corridor. And you can also disarm a trap. Rules for movement are very simple. You have these two red d6s and you roll those, and the result of your roll is the number of squares your hero can move. So we rolled 8 here. Let's say the barbarian goes first and he's gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Still has some movement left. But at this point, the Zargon player sees that the hero at this point can look left and right and see these goblins and these doors in their line of sight. So at that point, the Zargon player halts the player and tells everybody what the barbarian sees and places the appropriate pieces on the board. Doors that appear on the map are always closed unless stated otherwise in the quest notes. And once a hero opens the door, it remains open for the rest of the quest. The barbarian still has 3 movement left, so he can either go left or right and attack one of these 2 goblins. So let's say the barbarian is going to go to the right, because why not? And for their action, they are going to attack the goblin. I will explain how combat works in a bit. First, a bit more info about movement. A hero can only enter a room through a door. You cannot move through walls, of course. You can also not move through spaces occupied by a monster, but a hero may move through a space occupied by another hero, but of course they cannot end their movement on the same space as another hero. Movement is always orthogonal, so like this and this. You can never move diagonally unless it's of course with 2 movement points. There is one exception for occupying the same space, and that is with a pit trap. Should a hero fall into a pit trap and another hero does the same, then they both occupy the same pit trap. I will also discuss how traps work in a bit, but another thing to know about movement is that heroes may attempt to jump over a trap. Now, to do so, a hero must have at least 2 movement left to be able to move these 2 squares for jumping over that trap. They must do a skill check by rolling 1 combat die, that's these white dice. If they roll anything but a skull, they successfully jump over the trap, and then after that, if they have any points of movement remaining, they may use them. But if that hero rolls a skull, then they spring the trap and suffer any damage caused by that particular type of trap. Once a trap is sprung, the Zargon player puts the corresponding trap tile on the board, because they are usually not placed on the board when discovered, but only pointed out. Should a pit trap be discovered in the corner of a corridor, like this for example, or in a different situation where there's a trap in a corner with another part of the room being blocked by furniture, for example, then it is possible for a hero to jump diagonally as long as they have 2 points of movement remaining. So if their check is successful and they roll anything but a skull, they also can jump diagonally like so. As long, of course, as the square on the other side of the trap is not occupied. Some traps are pointed out when discovered but do not have a tile, such as a spear trap, more on that later. But a pit trap, when sprung, is placed on the map, and that can still be jumped over, but there are also falling block traps which are pointed out, and when triggered, the Zargon player places a fallen block on the map, and those cannot be jumped over. They permanently block a space on the board. Opening doors is a free action and can be taken by any hero standing next to a door. Other free actions are drinking potions, if you have any, picking things up, and exchanging items with players that are adjacent to where you are. But note that a player can only exchange items with another player if they are adjacent, but also if there are no monsters adjacent to either of those heroes. So in this case, this hero is basically engaged with that goblin, so they cannot exchange items. Whenever a hero announces that they are going to open a door, the Zargon player checks their map and checks what is behind that door, and then replaces the closed door standee with an open door standee. and puts all the furniture and monster in that room as indicated in the quest book. So in this case, we have a table in the back of the room here. There is a skull tile, which is a special item here in this quest. You'll find the skull tiles on this map in the part sheet. Each skull tile represents one of Ragnar's fallen scouts. So this is a mission specific thing, so you can put this one down as the heroes explore this room. There's an orc in this room and another goblin. And there is a new door, a closed door between these two rooms as well. Anything else is not placed, so there is a trap here indicated in the quest book, but that is kept secret by the Zargon player. Likewise, any secret doors or treasure is also not revealed to be in that room if that is in the quest notes. So let's talk about combat. The barbarian was going to attack that goblin. So the Zargon player checks the back of the game master screen or one of the monster cards that has the goblin on it. And a goblin has 10 movement squares, 2 attack dice, 1 defense die, 1 body point and 1 mind point. The barbarian player checks their card and they have 3 attack dice and 2 defend dice, 8 body points and 2 mind points. So then the barbarian takes a number of attack dice as indicated on their card, and this can change during the game if they find different kinds of weapons. Right now he attacks with 3 attack dice because the starting weapon is the broadsword, which is a weapon that has 3 attack dice. So the barbarian swings his broadsword and rolls the dice, and on a skull they do a hit. Now in this case the barbarian rolled very badly because these are white shields and a black shield, so the barbarian completely misses the goblin. But let's say he had rolled 1 skull there, then it's time for the goblin to roll defense dice. They only roll 1, so the Zargon player takes a single die and rolls it. And monsters only defend with the black shield. So in this case they rolled a white shield, which means the single damage is done. And because the goblin only has 1 body point, it is defeated and taken off the board. Had the barbarian, as in the example, not rolled any skulls at all, then they miss and the goblin didn't even need to roll for defense. But had the barbarian had 2 hits, then the goblin would have died anyway because they can only defend 1 of those. And the same happens the other way around. So let's say all 4 heroes have taken their turns. This goblin is still alive and it is attacking the dwarf. The dwarf right here has 2 attack dice and 2 defend dice. So the Zargon player will roll 2 attack dice for the goblin and once again misses, but if they had rolled a skull, then the dwarf needs to defend with 2 defense dice in this case. And the heroes only defend on a white shield. So the hero here rolled a black shield and a skull, which means they did not successfully defend against that 1 damage. So they would take 1 body point of damage. And they started out with 7 body points, so they take their character sheet and they note a 6 in the first square of their body point track. And the next time they would take damage or heal body points, they simply cross out the previous number and write in the next number. Note that you can only attack a monster that is orthogonally adjacent to you, and the same goes for the monsters, unless you have a weapon that allows you to attack diagonally. Same goes for the monsters unless the quest notes state otherwise. Since you have only 1 action per turn aside from moving, you can only attack once per turn and may only use 1 weapon at a time unless you have a special weapon that allows you to attack multiple times. If a monster has multiple hit points, such as a mummy, then the Zargon player, if they have a mummy in play that is being attacked and that loses 1 body point due to an attack, they place a skull token underneath that miniature to indicate it has taken 1 hit. And since it only has 2 body points, if it is hit again, it is simply completely removed. And if a monster has 3 or more body points, you just continue adding skulls if it hasn't been killed yet to keep track of the damage. Should a hero come into the possession of a weapon that allows them to attack diagonally, such as the staff, then this allows them to attack a monster even around a corner or behind an open door if they are diagonal from that hero like this, or if they are behind the door and the hero is diagonal to that square the monster is on, and this allows for strategic positioning. Another action heroes can take is casting spells if they are spellcasters. But before going into that, I need to explain how line of sight works. If a hero wants to cast a spell, they need line of sight, and you determine that by drawing an imaginary line from the center of the caster's square to the center of the target's square. So in this case, this mummy over here is clearly within line of sight of the wizard. This mummy over here is also within line of sight because the line you would draw will cross unhindered into the mummy square. It will just cross this corner here, but if it just touches a corner, then that's all right. Monsters and heroes do block line of sight. So this orc over here is blocked from the wizard's line of sight by the elf. This dread warrior over here is also hidden behind this corner because if I draw a line from the center of this square to the center of that square, I would go through the edge of this room, and thus this character is not within line of sight. Now the rulebook does have a small error, which is copied from the original 89 HeroQuest, which also had this error, because it says that the hero there has line of sight of the orc over here in the middle. But strictly speaking, if I draw a line from the middle of this square to the middle of that square, I would not go through this corner, but I would pass through the middle of this line right here on this square, which means I go through that square just a little bit, which means that this goblin right here is obscured from his line of sight by the elf. Had the wizard been standing here, then they would be able to see that goblin, but again, not the dread warrior and not the orc, because the elf is still blocking his line of sight. He can see the zombie over there, but he can no longer see the mummy. Obviously, you cannot see through closed doors, so whatever is behind this door, the wizard cannot see, but an open door obviously does allow for a line of sight into the room. So from there, he can see the orc over there, but not the goblin. But if he would be standing here or even here, then again you would be drawing a diagonal line from the center of this square to the center of that square, and that diagonal line does cross the corner of this door, but that again is all right, just like with the corner of the corridor. So now that we understand line of sight, let's explain spells. Heroes and also monsters that have spells may cast them on another target if it's within line of sight. So let's say the elf here wants to cast Fire of Wrath. And this card says that you may cast this on any one monster in your line of sight to singe them with fire that inflicts 1 body point of damage. The target rolls 1 movement die. On a roll result of a 5 or 6, they take no damage, and you can only cast that spell once per quest. Normally all spell cards are a one-time use per quest. So right now, the elf does not have line of sight of this goblin or any of the monsters in this room, so the dwarf will have to get out of the way first. So if the dwarf had taken their turn before the elf and moved back, or maybe they moved inside to try and fight these monsters, and that means the elf does now have free line of sight to the goblin. So they announce that they are casting Fire of Wrath on the goblin, and then you read the card, and in this case the Zargon player will have to roll 1 movement die, and they're in luck, they roll a 5, so the goblin does not take damage. It lives to fight another turn. So another action a hero can do on their turn is to search for traps or secret doors. In the original 89 rules, this used to be 1 action, but now the rules have been separated into either searching for traps or secret doors, and you can search for those in a corridor, again, in the corridor that is within your line of sight. So if the barbarian wanted to search and was standing here, then they could see this part of the corridor and that part of the corridor. But if you're searching inside a room, then you search the whole room. Now, when searching for traps, the Zargon player will simply point out if there are any traps in that area or not. If there's nothing, then nothing happens, of course. If there is a trap, then Zargon will say which trap is in that area and where it is. So they might say there is a pit trap on this square right here, but they do not yet put a pit trap tile down just yet. If a hero finds a secret door, then the Zargon player will place a secret door token on the spot where it was found. Now the rules state that a secret door remains closed until you move adjacent to it and announce that you are opening it. At which point Zargon will put all the monsters and furniture into the room that the secret door leads to, just like you would when opening a regular door. You can also only search for traps and secret doors if there are no monsters within your hero's line of sight. So had the elf still be standing there, then the barbarian could have searched for traps or secret doors along this corridor up until here, or along the corridor up until here. The rules also state that a hero cannot search for traps in a room through an open door like this. That means that if there is a trap on the square directly behind an open door, the hero cannot search it by standing outside of that door. There are 4 types of traps in HeroQuest. There's the earlier mentioned pit trap, there's the falling block trap, there's a spear trap, and there can also be chest or furniture traps. And like I said earlier, when a hero searches for traps and discovers a pit trap, you simply say, hey, there's a pit trap over there, for example, but you do not yet place the pit trap token on that spot. And the same goes for falling block traps. You simply say, well, this spot looks like it has a weak ceiling that may collapse. And a spear trap works the same way. Zargon simply points out which square has that trap without telling them what kind of trap it is. Now, if a hero had not searched or is careless and walks onto a spot that has a trap, then if it is a pit trap, then Zargon puts down that tile and the hero falls in. Zargon announces that you have stumbled into a pit trap, and that hero suffers 1 body point of damage. And also their turn immediately ends. As a hero, once you are in a pit, you may search that pit for treasure or secret doors as if it were a separate room unto itself. Also, when in a pit, you may attack and defend as normal, but you roll 1 less die to attack or defend yourself. This also applies to monsters that fall into pit traps. But as a hero, your minimum attack or defense strength is always 1 combat die, even if the pit penalty would reduce your dice to 0. Moving out of a pit trap simply requires 1 movement point, which you can do on your next turn. Monsters with enough movement points always successfully jump over a pit, as long as there's a vacant square beyond. And if a monster voluntarily enters a pit, they suffer no damage. Now, if a hero triggers a falling block trap, then you place this rubble falling block trap tile underneath where the hero just stepped, and you tell them that they have sprung a falling block trap. The ceiling is caving in, and that hero must now roll 3 combat dice, and for every skull they roll, they take 1 body point of damage. And then the hero decides if they move to either side of that trap. If this was a free spot, they could move here or back, and their turn immediately ends. Beware though that if you choose to move ahead of that falling block, you might end up in a sealed off room or corridor, so be careful. If a hero springs a spear trap, then Zargon simply announces that they did trigger a spear trap. The hero rolls 1 die, and on a skull they take 1 body point worth of damage. And again, their turn immediately ends. If a hero is in a room that has furniture or a treasure chest like this, and they're searching for traps in that room, and the quest notes state that perhaps the chest or the furniture is trapped, then Zargon simply points out that that piece of furniture looks dangerous. After spying a trap either in furniture or in a corridor or a room, a hero may attempt to disarm a trap. And to disarm a trap, a hero needs to have the toolkit or be the dwarf who inherently knows how to disarm traps They must of course know the location of the trap, and then they announce to Zargon that they are attempting to disarm that trap. So they will move onto that trap square or next to the furniture, so like this or like this, and they once again roll 1 combat die. If you roll a skull, you spring the trap and suffer the damage. But if you roll a shield, either the white or the black shield, the trap is disarmed. The dwarf, however, being very proficient at disarming traps, only springs it on a black shield, but not on a skull or a white shield. Disarming a trap is also an action you can take. And the sixth and final action a hero can take on their turn is to search for treasure. You can only search for treasure in a room, so you must be inside that room to search the room for treasure. You cannot search a room for treasure if there are monsters inside that room. And each hero may search a given room only once, but all 4 heroes may search the same room. I suggest using tokens to indicate that, or note it on your notepad, or alternatively Zargon can keep track of that without telling the heroes, so that if they search the same room again on a later turn in the same quest, then Zargon can tell them they've already searched that room and find nothing special. If there is any special treasure to be found, according to the quest notes, then Zargon will tell the heroes what they found. If there is special treasure, then only the first hero to search that room finds that special treasure. The next hero searching that same room, or if there is no special treasure in that room, that hero draws a card from the treasure deck. Disarming a furniture trap works just the same, and triggering a furniture trap if you're searching for treasures in a room that has trapped furniture also works the same. In that case, you just follow the quest notes. There are different kinds of treasures to be found in the treasure deck. There are wandering monsters, and every quest will have a different type of wandering monster. So for example, in this first quest, the wandering monster is a goblin. That's always specified in the quest notes. Then the Zargon player places that monster adjacent to the hero who searched for treasure. If the squares surrounding the hero are all occupied, then you place the monster as close to that hero as possible. If you can place it adjacent to the hero, then that monster attacks immediately. But if not, then the monster does not attack that turn. You resolve an attack as normal with the dice, and the monster stays on the board until defeated. Other treasure cards can be jewels, of gold, riches, potions that you note on your hero sheet. You just note what you find, and potions stay on your hero sheet until you use them, then you just cross them off. And gold is simply noted on your hero sheet as well. You may also find a hazard, and in that case you simply read what the card says and resolve its effect. So then, after all 4 heroes have taken their turns doing a movement and one of the 6 actions, it's Zargon's turn. And just like the heroes, Zargon may use all the monsters that are currently on the board and use them to move and attack the heroes. Some quest notes will also say that there are specific monsters that can use these dread spells, and the quest will specify which dread spells that monster can use, and they can use them as an action. And just like the hero's spells, that monster will need to have line of sight to a hero that they're casting the spell on. And also, just like normal spells, every dread spell can only be used once per quest, and then it's used up and gone. Obviously, monsters will not search for treasure or secret doors. They can also not move or attack diagonally. They can't pass over heroes, but they can pass through other monster miniatures, just not end their turn on the same square. They can of course not move through walls. They also can't open or close doors. And they can also move through traps without springing them, and neither will they search for or disarm traps. Monsters don't have to roll their dice to move. They simply have a fixed number of movement squares noted on their cards. And the Zargon player decides which monster will attack which hero and how far they will move. and if they're using a brettspiel, if they have any, that's all up to the Zargon player. And just like we discussed earlier, attacking is resolved by rolling the number of attack dice listed on their card, after which the heroes may defend. Whenever a hero is reduced to 0 body points, they are defeated. So if here this dwarf got in way over its head with all of these monsters and they reduced him to 0 body points, then that dwarf is out of the game, and that player can no longer participate in the rest of that quest. On the next quest, that player then can, of course, create a new hero, which can be the same miniature or a completely different hero if you have expansions with different types of heroes, or you're not playing with 4 heroes and there's one of the miniatures left. But they will have to start anew without any gear. Now, any armor, weapons, or other treasures belonging to the fallen hero can be picked up there if there are other heroes within line of sight. But if that hero is alone in that room or corridor, then monsters will steal their belongings, even if there's not a monster miniature or standee nearby. But if a other hero is within line of sight and saw that hero fall, then they may pick up their gear once all monsters in that room or corridor have been defeated. Now, there are 2 ways in which a fallen hero can still help themselves recover before they die and escape death, and one of those ways is using a potion of healing. So if that fallen hero was in possession of a potion of healing, they immediately drink it and raise their body points above 0. Simply follow what it says on the card. In this case, this potion of healing requires you to roll 1 red die, a d6, and that's the number of body points you will gain. If you are a spellcaster, such as the elf or the wizard, and you still have the water of healing or the heal body spell available to you, then you can cast that spell if you haven't taken an action already that turn. But once your body points have been reduced to 0, another hero cannot use a healing spell on you anymore. Sometimes a quest may require more monsters than are available in the game box. So if all monsters are of a specific type are already on the game board and Zargon needs to place another one, then you may use any monster that is the same color as the one that you need. The plastic miniatures from the 2021 core box and expansions will have colored miniatures, but green monsters are considered goblins, orcs, and these abominations. White monsters are the undead, so that's the zombie, the mummy, and the skeletons. And gray monsters are the dread warriors and the gargoyle. And a quest can end in 3 ways. Either when the heroes achieve the goal of the quest and reach the exit, which in a lot of cases is just returning to the staircase they came in from. In some cases they need to exit through another way. Or the heroes do not complete everything the quest wants them to, but they return to the staircase and escape the dungeon. And in that case, you may want to attempt the quest again, starting from the beginning. Or when all 4 heroes die. But when a quest has been successfully completed, then all the treasure or rewards that the heroes collectively have gotten during that quest can be split equally or shared to be spent in the armory. You can circle the quest you just finished on your quest note. Your body points will be restored to full, as well as your mind points. Any weapons and armor that you found during the quest and noted on your sheet, as well as any artifacts that you might have found, are also kept. The spellcaster heroes regain all of their spells to be used on the next quest again, but should a quest result in a failure or the heroes escape without fulfilling the main objective, and they attempt the same quest again on a next session, then the Zargon player may decide to make the quest a little bit easier by having less monsters in the rooms, or adding a secret hidden potion of health here and there, or perhaps play a little less aggressively. Or you can use the blank HeroQuest maps in the back of the quest book to design a slightly altered version of the quest you're attempting again. Because the role of the Zargon player is not necessarily to try and win from the heroes and defeat them all. It's their job to make it challenging and exciting for the heroes. And if there's a specific artifact that the heroes need to advance the story, but they lose it during the quest because one of the heroes that had it has fallen and monsters have taken their loot, then instead of retrying that mission if the other hero survived and escaped the dungeon, then Zargon can include that specific artifact as a special treasure early in the next quest. So in between quests, you can visit the armory, which is basically all of the equipment cards. And on these cards, you will see a value in gold coins. And all the gold you collected during a quest may be put towards buying gear for your heroes. So you can pool together all the gold you found and buy something for one hero or two, depending on how much you gained, of course. And it may take a number of quests to get enough to buy something good or buy something for everybody. But you simply look at the card that you want to buy, you cross off that much money from your character sheet or collectively cross that off. And the hero who gets the purchased item simply notes that on their character sheet. You can also sell any items that you found or gained if you don't use them anymore. And when selling back to the armory, you will only get 50% of the cost that is on the card. So if you have a chainmail and later on you're getting the plate mail and you want to sell the chainmail again, which costs 500 gold coins, you get 250 gold coins back. You can of course always give it to another player as well. Potions are a one-time use, so any potions that you find and use in a quest are then discarded and shuffled back into the treasure deck after the quest is over. And you can drink potions at any time, and you may drink more than one potion at a time. Any potions you have not used during a quest you can note on your character sheet. Although in the retro video game, potions go bad in between quests, so you can bring them with you. I'll leave that up to you to decide. In HeroQuest, furniture is usually just used for decoration, but it's pretty much an unwritten rule that furniture blocks movement, so you can't move your characters on top of furniture, be it a 2D piece of furniture or an actual 3D piece of furniture. And furniture also doesn't block line of sight, but I've always house ruled that the tall furniture, such as the bookcase, the fireplace, and the cupboard, do block line of sight. Because as you can see, even the tall barbarian cannot look over these tall furnitures. Now with the 2D furniture from First Light, you can always house rule that you can actually move onto furniture because that's easy enough to do, or even come up with some house rules that limit line of sight for the lower furniture. For example, if the dwarf is standing here on one side of a table and there's an orc on the other side, and the dwarf has a ranged weapon such as the crossbow, then Zargon could give the orc one extra die to defend with, to take into account the extra partial cover that the table or other low furniture would provide to the orc. But again, any tall furniture would completely block line of sight. But that's pretty much up to the players to decide. The First Light quest book has a couple of additional rules that I think should have been included in the rule book, but one of those rules is about monsters without mind points, which are usually the undead. And that rule states that spells that affect creatures with mind points, such as the sleep spell, cannot be cast on monsters that have no mind points, because in this case they cannot be put to sleep because these are mindless constructs controlled by some other dark force. And another additional rule that is new in First Light is the unthreatened movement rule, which states that if there are no monsters active on the board, heroes may move unimpeded. So instead of rolling for movement with the movement dice, they can treat every die as being 4 movement points. So if you have 2 red dice to roll, you can move up to 8 spaces. But should you have the heavy plate armor that removes one of the movement dice, then you can move a maximum of 4, or just take a risk and roll your movement dice anyway. And 2 new rules from the First Light quest book are the Healing Hearth and the Sly Storage, which means when a hero would draw a treasure card in a room containing a fireplace, they may, instead of searching that room for treasure, heal 1 body point. but that will count as having searched the room for treasure, so they cannot search that room for regular treasure for the rest of the quest. And the sly storage means that the first hero to draw a treasure card in a room containing the cupboard instead draws 2 treasure cards, and you resolve those cards in the order they are drawn. And those are all the rules for playing HeroQuest and HeroQuest First Light. Many expansions will also introduce new rules for additional things such as new traps. But for now, let's go to my final thoughts. So my final thoughts on HeroQuest First Light by Avalon Hill and Hasbro. Let's start with the components. This small box packs a lot of components, as you can see here. There's a lot of stuff you get. You get all of the standees, and this is of course different from the 21 core game, which had actual miniatures for everything, but it does mean that the price for this core box is greatly reduced. And they look really cool. They are made of a thick cardboard. Each single standee has its own base, so there's enough bases for everything, including the doors, so you're not short, you don't have to swap them around again. They slide in very easily, but you basically just put them in and never take them off again. And the artwork on them is nice. They're printed on both sides. It's the same print, just mirrored. It would have been nice if you had a front and a back side art piece. But since orientation in this game doesn't matter, attacking from the back is the same as attacking from the front, I guess they just went with the same art assets for that. I like that they've included tiles for everything. You have these skull tiles that are used in different quests for different things. You can use them to indicate damage to enemies that have multiple hit points, and just stack these on their card so you know how many damage they took. The cards are of a good quality. They're exactly the same as in the 2021 core box. They're of a normal thickness. They seem to have a linen finish. The printing is clear on them, and there's plenty of them. The bigger tiles, the furniture tiles, are thicker than the smaller tiles that you use for passages and pit traps and you name it. They're a bit thicker. And I do like that. They are of a very good quality. They are printed nicely. I do think that these are a little bit too big. They are like exactly 2 by 3 inches, so they would technically fit exactly on these 1-inch grid tiles on the board. But since a lot of the rooms have their walls drawn in on the inside, so they take up a little piece of that square, of that art, that means that if you have furniture that's against the wall or in a corner, it's going to cover that wall art, if you will. So you put those items in the corner because you want those squares around it to be free for a miniature to be able to move there. So I would have liked it if these bigger tiles for all the furniture were just a little bit smaller, so you can actually fit them within the walls and not overlap on other squares surrounding them. So that is a tiny thing that I would have done differently for these components, but they just went with the exact inches sizes for everything, which does make the map a little bit crowded because of course the bases are also 1-inch circular bases. Same goes for the standees, and the standees, you know, they're pretty big. Some of them are pretty large. So, you know, things might get crowded a little bit here and there, especially if there's also furniture and other tiles in the room. And the bases for the doors are now also circular, as opposed to the classic 89 game, which had these rectangular bases, which strangely enough are still referenced in the book. As you can see here, this is very small, of course, but the image they use on the maps still have the vertical or the rectangular bases in the drawing, whereas, of course, the physical doors have these round bases, which also means if you put them in between a corridor and a room, or in between 2 rooms on the wall separating them, then part of both squares on either side is occupied by half of this base, which means your miniature, well, it can't stand there if you put it on top of that base, but they're basically in each other's way, which, I mean, is not that big of a deal.
but it's there. And I've always advocated to have maps, the board, with bigger squares than just the exact 1 inch, because it gets really crowded. Everything is exactly 1 inch or a multiple of that, like these tiles. And that means that everything just fits inside, and overlapping things like the doors get in the way, and there's not a lot of wiggle room. With a bigger grid size, you would have more wiggle room, and I think that is a better way to do it. But ever since the 89 official first release of HeroQuest and the reprints by Hasbro and Avalon Hill, it's always been exactly 1 inch. Yeah, so it does get a little bit crowded sometimes on these tiles. The miniatures are pretty good. Of course, you got the 4 hero miniatures, which look very nice and very detailed. They got the right size. They are, of course, compatible with the other HeroQuest games and expansions. I like that this game has this dragon figure. It's a relatively small dragon, of course, but it's 2 squares wide, the base. And it's done in a kind of a metallic gray, almost silver color. But it's a nice and detailed figure, so this is unique to First Light, which is pretty cool. You get a character sheet here with a bunch of paper leaves here for your characters, and there's plenty of them. The 21 version had more of these, but there's plenty, and you can always copy or laminate a few of them to keep on using these. There's no problem with that. The board itself is really nice. The art on it is beautiful. They redid the art for the original board layout, which is on the other side of this board here. And they made an entirely new board with it, which is in caves, or so it seems, which looks really cool and gives a whole new map to make new quests on. And there are, of course, new quests in the quest book for it. But fans can now start making new quests for this map as well, which I think is very exciting. So that's a really nice addition to this game. And all of that fits in a pretty compact and small box, which also has really cool artwork on the cover. So that's well done as well. The insert is, however, very basic. You get a little plastic tray for the miniatures, which is sufficient, and the dice, and that works really well. But otherwise, you just get a paper tray to just throw all of your standees in, which works. They just fit. You just put them in and you shuffle them around a bit, and then you can still close the lid, and that works. The second tray, though, is just a piece of paper that they didn't even kind of stick together, which is, of course, easily remedied. You can do that yourself. But yeah, that seems a bit strange and cheap way to do that. Because this can hold your cards. I would have made a divider in here, which I probably will do myself, to keep the cards on one side and then have some extra room for standees. I put my my open doors in here, and then all the monster standees and the closed doors in the bigger tray, along with all the small tiles as well and the furniture. And it all just fits. It's very compact, but it works. It does the job. The rulebook is good. You get a small rulebook which has all the rules in it. It has diagrams. I like that they added the colors for Zargon and the heroes, so it's very clear what's important for who. But of course, you read everything as Zargon to explain the rules to the players. It has a nice component reference in the back here, which explains what everything is, basically just by pictures, and you'll find what they do in the quest book. Then the artwork. I love the artwork. It's beautiful. The board looks absolutely beautiful. Both sides are wonderfully illustrated. I like the art on all the cards for the monsters and for the treasure and the spells and everything. And even the backs of the cards are really nice. Of course, exactly the same as in the 21 core box as well. But yeah, and I like that they used the black and white, or technically dark brown and white line art for all the illustrations on the front of the cards, just like we had in classic HeroQuest. So everything looks really nice. Also, the art on the Game Master screen that I actually forgot to mention is also a great component, just like in the core box of the 21 version. But it has really nice art, and I like that, of course, you have all the information you need as the Zargon player right there at your disposal, which is very handy. This is really everything you need to know once you've read the full rules. That works really well, and it's a nice and sturdy cardboard as well. The theme is, of course, also wonderful. I love a good fantasy story, and I love dungeon crawling. So thematically, this is totally my bag. I love this. I've loved this since the first original HeroQuest came out. I saw the TV commercials and I thought, this is awesome. And I only got the game much later though in my life, but I loved it so much. I played the heck out of this. So I'm very excited that we do now have a new edition, and this First Light edition with the new maps and the new quests. And of course, there's plenty of expansions as well. And thematically, I just love that. I just love a good fantasy story. And the story is pretty nice. The quests are a story that kind of follows up, and you play it from start to finish, and you finish a whole campaign basically. So that's a lot of fun. And that brings me to the gameplay, of course. Gameplay is very simple. Simple rules. It hasn't changed much since the original release. It uses the North American rules from 1990, and it just works really well. On your turn, you just move and you take an action, and you have several actions. You can attack. If there's no monsters, you can search for treasures or for traps. You can disable a trap if you're the dwarf, or if you have the toolkit, you can search specific elements on the board if the rules tell you to. If the quest notes tell you that there's like a chest or a bookcase that is searchable, you can do that as well. It's all very simple, and that makes the game very accessible. I also like the dice a lot. This is just, again, a component I forgot really to mention. A nice looking dice with clear icons engraved on them and colored in black. And it's as simple as it was with the first edition of the game. You get 3 skulls, which usually mean you hit something or a monster hits you. You get the white shields, which is the hero's defense icon, and the black shield is the monster's defense icon. So they have less defense chances than the heroes do, but they're sometimes also used for other things like disarming a trap. And you get 6 of those, and that is plenty. That's all you need. And then just 2 really basic red D6s for movement. There are simple rules for line of sight, for seeing your enemies, or when you're casting a spell. And all of that works really nicely. There are a few nitpicks I have about that, which I have explained in my full review of HeroQuest, where I talked about the classic game and the new version. I've linked that in the eye icon in the corner of the video and in the description below. So if you'd like to check that out, do give that a look as well. But even with the few flaws that it has, it is so simple. It makes the game super accessible for pretty much all ages. It's a super fun and family friendly dungeon crawler, and I really enjoy playing this. I love seeing all the quests, both officially and fan made. There is a huge fan base. Check out yeoldin.com on the internet for more quests, more resources. There's so much information there for you to discover and to play with your copy of HeroQuest. So basically, replayability here is endless. This set, of course, comes with 10 quests that you can play, so that has a limited replayability, of course. But the game does tell you that you can make your own quests here right at the back. You get empty sheets, an empty map for both sides of the board, with a whole bunch of icons that you can photocopy, and then you can start cutting and pasting that in, or just do it digitally. You can do that as well and make your own quests, and you can find a lot of those online. So just using your own imagination, the replayability is absolutely endless, and it inspires you. You get creative, you get your kids to get creative, and I love that about a game. This game will stimulate your kids to get creative and design their own quests, and that's just priceless to me. And then finally, there's the language dependency. This game is, of course, very language dependent. All the cards have English text on them in my English edition, of course. All the spells, all the artifacts, the treasures that you find, and of course the quests themselves are all in English, but the game has been published in multiple languages, of course, so you might be able to find a copy in your language. So make sure to check if it is available in your language. Otherwise, you can possibly pick up the English copy, which to me is not a problem, but to some it might, so keep that in mind. So in the end, HeroQuest First Light is just like regular HeroQuest, an absolute classic that I can absolutely recommend to anyone who likes cooperative games, who likes dungeon crawlers, and who likes fantasy. This is a classic, it's an evergreen, and it stays fun, to me at least, and especially with all the quests that fans make for this, the replayability is absolutely endless. So definitely recommending this one. Even if you already have the classic HeroQuest or the 2021 HeroQuest, First Light is a fun addition to your collection, not just because of the second board that you get with all the new options. You can make new quests for that board, and you will definitely find new quests for that online. You also get this cool dragon miniature, which is pretty nice. And since it comes in a more compact box, this is easier to take with you to game nights if you're going somewhere else to play this game. So definitely giving this 2 thumbs up. I'd like to thank Hasbro for sending over a copy for me to review. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up as well. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That really helps the channel. And please also check out my Patreon page if you'd like to support what I do. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Board Game Heaven.